If you're curious about the world of folding pocket knives, you've come to the right place. We're going to break down some information that will help you choose the right knife to fit your lifestyle. Folding knives seem pretty straightforward. They are knives where the blade folds to fit into the handle, keeping it from being in a fixed position and making it a safer and more compact tool that you can carry comfortably in your pocket or bag. What makes them a great option for an everyday carry or an EDC is that most have a locking mechanism that keeps them from snapping closed. Folding knives are great to have readily available for daily cutting tasks like opening letters and boxes or peeling fruit. It's also good to have one on hand in the event that you need a self-defense tool, because many are designed to be opened quickly with one hand. Before we dive into how their parts work, let's go over what those parts are. Not every knife will have all of these features, but we've chosen a knife that's a good representation of what you may find on a folding knife. The end of the knife's handle is called the butt, which can also be referred to as the pommel of the knife. Moving upwards, we have the lanyard hole. This feature makes it so you can use a lanyard or paracord to attach cool accessories like a bead to your knife. For people who keep their folding knife in their pocket, having a lanyard can make it easier to pull it out if you don't like using a pocket clip. The pocket clip is typically on the back side of the handle scale, and it makes it possible to clip the knife to your inner pocket for a discreet carry. Some pocket knives have a reversible clip, which means you can unscrew the clip and customize how you carry your folder in your pocket, tip up or tip down. Some knives have finger grooves, which are designed to perfectly fit your fingers and guarantee a secure, comfortable grip. Moving past the bolster, which is the portion of the handle that leads directly to the steel blade, you'll see the pivot or the joint. Some folding knives have a pivot that's adjustable, so you can set the knife's action to your liking. The action of your folding knife is the speediness at which the blade deploys when you disengage the lock, but we'll cover deployment methods and locking mechanisms in a minute. On the spine, which makes up the entire back of the knife but usually refers to the unsharpened back of the knife blade, you'll find the thumb ramp. This is a feature that works as a guard to keep your finger from slipping upward toward the blade, and also gives you the option to apply pressure to the blade safely so you can make more powerful cuts. The portion of the blade that lines up directly with the thumb ramp is called the ricasso. Before we take a look at the blade itself, let's turn the folding knife so we can look at the inner workings of the handle. Near the pommel on the spine, you'll see the back spacer, which holds the two handle scales together. Some folding knives have standoffs instead, an alternative to a backspacer that helps bridge the handle scales in a way that makes it easier to clean. The absence of these parts indicates an integral handle, which means it's milled out of one solid piece of metal. The liner runs up one or both sides of the handle scales. Noting the material that makes up the liner, standoffs, and backspacers helps to determine the quality of the knife. More expensive folding knives are going to have parts made of higher quality materials. For example, the liner in a folding knife helps keep the handle scales from shrinking or taking too much stress that could impact the action of the knife. On each side of the blade there are washers or bearings, which give the steel the space and flexibility within the handle to pivot, which is what puts the fold in a folding knife. The detent is the pressure put on by a small, fixed ball to secure the blade in a closed position. You'll be able to see it in some knives, but many are concealed within the handle itself. Finally, we'll take a look at the blade. On the cutting edge side of the blade, adjacent to the ricasso, you'll see a choil, which is a small indent that precedes the sharpened edge of the knife. On the opposite side of the blade, on the spine, you may see jimping, which is a portion of the blade that has small notches designed to give your thumb a better grip when putting pressure on the knife. Blade shapes and styles are different, but you'll typically see two grinds and bevels on a folding knife. The primary grind is a large, ground portion of steel blade that leads directly to the secondary grind, which is a more intense and sharper grind that gives you your cutting edge. Many blades also have a swedge, which is a portion of the back of the blade that has been ground to appear as though there is a second edge on the blade. The belly of the blade is the rounded portion that curves under the knife's point, which is the very tip of the knife's blade. Depending on the blade shape of your knife, you'll have what's referred to as a full belly, or you may not have a belly at all. It increases the knife's ability to slice, and you'll often see skinning knives with a very distinct belly. Other blade shapes, like this Wharncliffe, have no curve at all. In order to use a folding knife, you'll need to learn the ins and outs of deployment and lockup so that you can operate it safely. The blade can be deployed in a number of ways. Folding knives can be opened using a flipper, which is a small lever that helps you to deploy the blade with one hand when pressure is applied. You can also use a thumb stud, which is a rounded lug on the blade that allows it to swing upward when pushing forward on it. A nail nick works in a very similar way, with a small indent in the blade that's meant to allow the tip of your nail to move the blade forward. Then you'd use both hands to fully extend the blade. Some folding knives have an assisted opening, which means that an internal mechanism finishes the upswing of the blade when it's only partially opened. Some knives have a thumb hole that works much like the thumb stud we showed you earlier, but it doesn't protrude at all from the blade. These holes are an extremely intuitive deployment method that allow for easier manipulation with gloves. You'll traditionally see these on Spyderco knives, but other brands have adopted the style and created similar opening slots for extending the blade of the knife. When it comes to closing your knife, your technique really depends on what locking mechanism you have. For example, if you're closing a liner lock knife, you'll move the lock sideways in the handle so that it disengages from the pivot point and allows the blade to fall forward. Frame locks work much the same way, but the lock is built into the actual frame of the knife. A lock back is aptly named because the lock is located on the back of the handle of the knife. After applying pressure to the mechanism, it releases the blade and allows it to swing downward toward the handle. There are plunge locks, also known as button locks, and while they're commonly found on automatic knives, they're also used in the design of some manual folders. They utilize a spring-loaded locking pin or bar to disengage the blade. Friction folders don't have a lock at all. They simply use friction or pressure to keep the blade in place. Some brands have trademarked or patented locks that are typically used specifically for their knives, unless they license out the design to another company. Benchmade is known for their axis lock, where you can close the blade by pulling the hardened steel bar toward the base of the handle, which disengages the mechanism and unlocks the blade. Spyderco's compression lock, one of the most beloved lock designs in the industry, uses a leaf-like spring from a split liner in the handle. Cold Steel has a variation of a lockback called the Triad lock, which is designed by Andrew Demko, and it's known as the strongest lock on the market. No matter which folding knife you choose, you want to make sure that whatever lock it uses gives a solid performance. No one wants to reach into their pocket and get nicked by their own knife, or have such a complicated deployment that you can't open it quickly in an emergency. Everyone says practice makes perfect, and knives are no different. As a beginner, opening and closing your knife may seem tough, but the more you get to know your new tool, the more comfortable you'll be handling it. It'll also get broken in the more you use it, so keep at it and remember to oil the pivot area to keep the mechanism working efficiently. Find the perfect folding knife at KnifeCenter, the original and largest online catalog of knives anywhere in the world. We're constantly updating our website and YouTube channel with new videos and tutorials, so check back often. Thanks for watching!